Hello and welcome back to Tutoring with Gavin. In this video I'll be walking you through Section A of the Edexcel English Language GCSE Paper 1 from the November 2018 past paper. Section B is covered in the playlist on narrative writing, which I will direct you to at the end of the video. This paper is worth 40% of the total GCSE and you have 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete the whole thing. For Section A, you should spend no more than an hour reading the extract and answering the 4 questions. First, let's take a look at the extract from The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. In this extract, the narrator has travelled through time far into the future for the first time. His time machine has turned over as he landed. The grey downpour was swept aside and vanished like the trailing garments of a ghost. Above me, in the intense blue of the summer sky, some faint brown shreds of cloud whirled into nothingness. The great buildings about me stood out clear and distinct, shining with the wet of the thunderstorm, and picked out in white by the unmelted hailstones piled along their courses. I felt naked in a strange world. I felt as perhaps a bird may feel in the clear air, knowing the hawk wings above and will swoop. My fear grew to frenzy. I took a breathing space, set my teeth, and again grappled fiercely, wrist and knee, with the machine. It gave under my desperate onset and turned over. It struck my chin violently, one hand on the saddle, the other on the lever. I stood panting heavily, ready to mount again. But with this recovery of a prompt retreat, my courage recovered. I looked more curiously and less fearfully at this world of the remote future. In a circular opening, high up on the wall of the nearer house, I saw a group of figures clad in rich soft robes. They had seen me, and their faces were directed towards me. Then I heard voices approaching me, coming through the bushes with the heads and shoulders of men running. One of these emerged in a pathway leading straight to the little lawn upon which I stood with my machine. He was a slight creature, perhaps 4 feet high, clad in a purple tunic, girdled at the waist with a leather belt. Sandals or buskins, I could not clearly distinguish which, were on his feet. His legs were bare to the knees, and his head was bare. Noticing that I had noticed for the first time how warm the air was, he struck me as being a very beautiful and graceful creature, but indescribably frail. At the sight of him, I suddenly regained confidence. I took my hands from the machine. In another moment, we were standing face to face, I and this fragile thing out of futurity. He came straight up to me and laughed into my eyes. The absence from his being of any sign of fear struck me at once. Then he turned to the 2 others who were following him and spoke to them in a strange and very sweet and liquid tongue. There were others coming, and presently a little group of perhaps 8 or 10 of these exquisite creatures were about me. One of them addressed me. It came into my head, oddly enough, that my voice was too harsh and deep for them. So I shook my head and, pointing to my ears, shook it again. He came a step forward, hesitated, and then touched my hand. Then I felt other soft little tentacles upon my back and shoulders. They wanted to make sure I was real. There was nothing in this at all alarming. Indeed, there was something in these pretty little people that inspired confidence, a graceful gentleness, a certain childlike ease. And besides, they looked so frail that I could fancy myself flinging the whole dozen of them about like 9-pins. But I made a sudden motion to warn them when I saw their little pink hands feeling at the time machine. Happily then, when it was not too late, I thought of a danger I had hitherto forgotten, and reaching over to the bars of the machine, I unscrewed the little levers that would set it in motion, and put these in my pocket. Then I turned again to see what I could do in the way of communication. So question 1. From lines 1 to 3, identify a word or phrase which describes the colour of the clouds. And the important thing to do here is to scan lines 1 to 3 for the information you need. Only spend a minute doing this, then move on quickly. So the answer, of course, is brown. The total for the question 1 is 1 mark. Question 2. From lines 6 to 10, give 2 ways in which the writer shows that the narrator is worried. You may use your own words or quotations from the text. Here are some examples of answers you could give, but don't forget it's asking you to find 2 ways in which the writer shows that the narrator is worried. With this question, you should search for any phrase that describes or suggests feelings or emotions of worry or fear. Once you find them, highlight them. Only spend 2 or 3 minutes on this question, then move on quickly. So you could use any of the following. I felt naked. I felt as perhaps a bird may feel in the clear air, knowing the hawk wings above and will swoop. My fear grew. He takes a deep breath. He grits his teeth to show his determination, panting heavily. The total for this question is 2 marks. Okay, question 3. In lines 12 to 27, how does the writer use language and structure to show the narrator's thoughts and feelings about the people he meets? Support your views with reference to the text. There should be sufficient evidence analysing both language and structure. It's very important. You have to do both. You have about 10 minutes to answer this question. Highlight the points you find in these lines, then try and put them into 2 fluid paragraphs, one for language and one for structure. Responses will be rewarded that explain how the writer uses language and structure to show the narrator's thoughts and feelings about the people he meets in lines 12 to 27. Do not waste time on an introduction or conclusion. To ensure that you cover both language and structure, cover language in your first paragraph and structure in the second. This makes it easier for the examiner to award you the top marks. So this is what you could write. H.G. Wells uses adjectives to describe clothing, such as rich, soft robes, which suggest gentleness, and purple tunic, which implies a classical or regal look. The physique is described as slight and perhaps 4 feet high, which shows that the narrator sees them as no threat. Instead, he considers them elegant and attractive, with adjective phrases such as very beautiful and graceful, but also fragile, with indescribably frail, and voices that were very sweet. Wells also uses pathetic fallacy with how warm the air was, which symbolises the pleasant and welcoming nature of those he meets. Wells also uses alliteration to emphasise the narrator's thoughts and feelings when he says this fragile thing out of futurity. The use of narrative structure is also very effective in this extract, with the first-person narrator moving from a defensive and fearful perspective to a more confident feeling of safety and security. The narrator's thought patterns are reflected in the use of dashes as parenthetical interjections, which help create a naturalistic urgency in his thought process. He was a slight creature, perhaps 4 feet high, clad in a purple tunic. He also uses sentence variety to emphasize his rapid thoughts. Then I heard voices approaching me. Wells uses a variety of sentence openings, such as then and in another moment, to maintain reader interest and keep the narrative fresh. Wells also uses repetition of the adjective bare to emphasize the contrast of this world with his prudish Victorian world of modesty. Total for question 3 is 6 marks. Question 4. In this extract, there is an attempt to show the narrator's experiences of a future world. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Support your views with detailed reference to the text. So it's important to evaluate how successfully the attempt to create the narrator's experiences of a future world is achieved, using detailed references to the text. This is all about the writer's technique, not whether you like the futuristic world. Spend between 20 and 25 minutes on this question. Highlight the quotes from the text that show how the writer creates this future world. Try to put them into 4 to 6 clear points. Again, do not waste time on an introduction or conclusion. So here's what you could write. Wells opens the passage with a strong focus on the visual senses, especially colours, creating powerful imagery of a future world. The grey downpour, the intense blue of the summer sky, brown shreds of cloud, and picked out in white. This creates a sense of unease and disorientation. The weather is also used to create ambiguity in this futuristic world, with a grey downpour, followed by the blue of the summer sky with buildings covered in unmelted hailstones. The writer then uses the device of contrast with the narrator's initial simile, like the trailing garments of a ghost, creating a sense of unworldliness, which is replaced by a clear and distinct vision. Tension is created initially as the time traveller seems nervous of this world and the increasing numbers of future people, as one emerged, 2 others who were following, a little group of perhaps 8 or 10. However, the last paragraph releases the initial tension. There was nothing in this at all alarming. Wells uses the first-person narrator to create a sense of unreal. He focuses on the apparent wealth and opulence of the people using the adjective rich and the purple colour of their clothing, which has connotations of royalty and high status, like a fairy tale. And the contrast of tunics and the bareness of heads and legs adds to this dreamlike image. There is intrigue in the description of the fragile thing, frail, with their little pink hands, which reflects the childlike nature of the creatures who want to see if the narrator is real or imaginary. This is a clever way of conveying the strangeness of this new world that seems removed from the ugly cynicism of the Victorian world of the narrator. Wells presents the narrator as almost parent-like at the end, removing objects of danger from the time machine to protect the pretty little people. Now there's 15 marks for that question. For advice on section B of this paper, please take a look at the playlist on narrative writing and be sure to subscribe to the channel so that I can continue to make free video tutorials. Until next time.